You open up 2K25 and it's like, hey, we're going to do a soft credit check on you. And if you have below 600, you can't play basketball. Welcome to Video Game Podtimism, the Optimists video game variety show where two best friends talk about the wonderful world of gaming. My name is, in fact, and still is, Chase.
And my name has always been and always will be David.
That's quite the proclamation, if I'm being real.
I ain't changing this name. That's a good name.
Yeah, I'm with you on the first name, for sure. I feel pretty confident that this is going to be the one I stick with, you know?
If you had to change your name to something else, what would it be?
Oh, man. For a long time when I was a kid, I wanted to be named Blake.
Blake?
Which... yeah.
Whoa.
I think it kind of has the same energy as being named like Spike or something like that. Like there's an intensity to it.
You like the K-E.
I like, the harsh ending of the name that kind of suited what I was going after.
Jake.
But I think
you need a hard consonant at the beginning.
I think that like Jake, it sounds like a name. Like that sounds like a guy, you know? But I wanted Spike, but I think I don't know a lot of Blakes. And so like, it just sounded like, whoa, that's a cool other name.
That's not a guy. That's a man, a beast.
Sure. Yeah.
A creature.
It's a creature. Yeah, a creature.
Blake the creature.
But I don't know what it would be. Maybe just my middle name, you know? Just go by Sterling now.
Wouldn't be Porktron?
It wouldn't be Porktron. God, that one really folled me around for a while.
It's good. It's memorable. Good gamer tag.
That was my first email. It's my first gamer tag.
So your AIM name?
That was my AIM name for sure for a long time until I went fucking corpo and now my email is just my first and last name.
That's really when you know a millennial has grown up, when they've shed their AIM or gamer tag on their email. Yeah. It's like, it's just my name.
Porktron22 at yahoo.com still exists. I go dive in that fucking pit every now and then.
What is in there?
Just, like literally 20,000 emails. Not only have I just never check it, but also whenever I'm like signing up for a thing and I'm like, I know that you're going to email me something terrible.
Gotcha.
It's going to Porktron. He'll be my garbage disposal.
Incinerator pit of emails.
Yes. Yeah. Because I needed to go somewhere and I still have access to it. So if they're like, oh, you got to click the button in your email. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll go like wade around in the muck to go get this link for you, but I'm not going back. You will not be marketing to me, sir.
Like grab a torch and a sword, like, I'll be back.
Yeah, no. I have to go hack down the like forest to find the golden idol that I'm looking for.
The confirmation code you just need.
Yeah, I pull the confirmation code and then a big boulder chases me out of my inbox.
The Indiana Jones theme plays 1/2 pitch up, so not to be copyrighted.
Yeah, no, they can't get us for that.
There you
go. Hey. Yes. Have you been playing video games, David?
I have been.
I would love to hear about them.
Real quick, I still have been playing Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh yeah.
Enjoying it. It's sticking better than I thought it would, at least as far as the combat goes. It still hasn't seemed to have gotten repetitive, which I'm a little surprised by, but they do a good job of giving you different combos to do, and you have to sometimes do like a rest between button presses, which keeps it a little bit more interesting. And some of the enemies are pretty hard, and the bosses are pretty fun and crazy. So having a good time with that one. Just a quick primer on that.
Sure.
I've mostly been playing Resident Evil 4. This game has gotten a hold of me. Man, they really did such a good job in so many different aspects of this game to make it feel so fresh. Like I still don't know what's coming around at any given corner. They've really just put, I mean, it's not even a new like coat of paint. It's just like a new reimagining of this game. Yeah,
they rebuilt the house. It's not just a new coat of paint.
Yeah, some of the areas are like, okay, I can see how like the El Gigante boss arena, like, okay, that's pretty much the same as before, which is nice to see like a little bit of nostalgia in there, but everything else is just so new. Like I had no idea when the Chainsaw Sisters were coming. I had no idea when the big creature with the claws was coming, who is now like has a little bit more lore behind them as like the castle's executioner, who was like some freak, which is great. I really like how they have given you these little side quests you can do to get the spinels, the little the blue note side quests or whatever they are, like shooting the medallions or going to fight a nasty dog. Really fun and just another form of currency that you have to look out for and gather to get the most out of your weapons and out of the game in general. I love hunting for the treasures and inlaying different gems in them and playing around with getting different combos with my gems. That is surprisingly fun, and just maximizing my money in this game is something I didn't think I was going to enjoy, but man, I am scrounging for pesetas 24/7 in this game because I have my eye on a new upgrade or a new weapon or something. So it gives this nice kind of mental break from also the core gameplay of, tension of like, oh, I should go over here and like loot some things. And looting is always just a joyous occasion for me. So I'm not as scared by all the creepy cultists at that point when I'm looting.
For sure. Which
is good. Really like how much better Ashley is in this game. She feels like a real human now, as opposed to just being the sassy girl in the first one, right? So yeah, I'm really curious to see how much more they change with her and just that storyline in general, because there are definitely some things that are a little bit different that I've encountered so far. I'm in the castle now, so I don't want to say too much for anyone who hasn't played this one, but it definitely changes her character a good portion. Makes her feel like part of the team much more than in the original. Yeah. Also really love the two small things they added to the combat, being the parry with the knife and the little bit of stealth that you can do. Both of those add such a seemingly small wrinkle to things, but really make it feel much more modern and streamlined that way. Like the stealth, it's not like you're going to go around Sam Fisher style and kill all of these guys. No, you're going to get spotted, but like maybe you could take out 2 or 3 of them, and that really can even the odds if you find the right dudes to take out. The knife, oh my goodness gracious, the parry with the knife is so clutch, and it feels so good when you nail it. If you're just like shooting some people back and forth, someone comes up with the knife hit you parry with the knife, you shoot them, kick all 3 of those people, they all go, and you just like go on to the next group of folks to take down. It just adds a very nice bit of offensive flow to the game that the original did not have, because if something got too close to you, you have to just kind of quick turn around and run away and like start shooting again, which did add a little bit to the tension of it all. But I think just as from a gameplay mechanic point wise, I think I prefer this because it just lets you have so much more fluidity and options of how to engage with the game. Really nice touch with that.
The parry became like a critical part of how I played that game eventually. Like I simply couldn't play it again without it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm like, ooh, can I go back and play the original now? Probably, because I do think that there are some visual changes that make the original a little spookier to me. This one feels much more action oriented. I don't say that as a bad thing. It's just I like the original Resident Evil 4. Maybe it was just because I was a teenager, scared the hell out of me. But I digress. It's still a scary game, but maybe I'm just a grown man now. So yeah, having a lot of fun with that. I've got through the village. The village is still immaculate vibe wise.
It's so good. Yeah.
And I really like how they've changed the castle. I think it's a lot more engaging visually now than in the original. So excited to see what else this game has in store for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Also, I went back into NBA 2K24.
Oh baby, we're back.
Excited.
Football time, baby.
Football time. Bum, 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 bum. That's not what they play for basketball. That's sport. A football noise. But anyways, I digress. Just watched the Kings game. I was ready to go in and live my ghoulish life to the max. Play as my favorite team. See the Kings win a game with me like just not fucking up, which is usually what you have to do when you're like a 60 out of 100 when you first start on these games. I'm ready to do it. I'm like, NBA 2K is back for me. This is great. And I open up the first screen even before the game even starts up, and it's like, hey, you didn't confirm your email, so all of your data has been erased. Sorry.
Oh my God.
And then all of the goodwill is gone.
Hasn't this happened before? Haven't you played another sports game that did this?
I think it happened with an NFL game.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think like there was like an email problem and it just nuked your save file.
If I have to go into my Gmail account and confirm my account to not have
to play basketball.
My game be nuked from orbit. That's not how it works. No, that is not good. That's not good.
That's insane, dude.
So I'm retroactively rescinding all the positive things I said last week about this game. That really just killed it all for me.
I mean, literally, how do you even play the game after that?
I don't know. Yeah, they're back on the naughty list.
Yeah.
2K. Man, that was such a bummer.
Sometimes you and I talk about how like certain game mechanics can be punishing, you know, like lives in a game can sometimes feel like punishment.
Yes.
Where it's like, if you didn't memorize it fast enough, you're punished by having to like go back and do a bunch more. Mm-hmm. But this is like actual literal punishment.
Yeah.
Where like you didn't confirm your email and they're like, you have to do it again. You have to play the whole game over again.
I didn't check my email because it got filtered probably into my spam. Yeah. Because Google knows better. I never saw it. Oh my God. So yeah, it's very frustrating. It is very frustrating. So I deleted it.
It's probably wise.
Out of principle, I had to. Yeah. So I'm curious to see what sort of fresh hell they cook up next year in this genre. Sorry if this is me being not very Podtimistic, but man, that is very obnoxious.
I think being a podcast that is trying to focus on the good things and also a game has like just pooped on your bed.
Yeah.
Like we have a responsibility to say that is like a bad practice. It's like anti-consumer almost.
It is. I can't be an apologist for this, right?
No, absolutely not.
They're adding friction outside of the game space to me playing this game, you know? Yeah,
like they are trying to create a like simulacrum of like a bureaucracy inside the video game. Like that's what the game is telling you to do. Like, we have punished you for not following up with the logistics of the video game.
It's secretly a bureaucracy sim to teach all the kids nowadays what it's like to be a little worker bee in the capitalist society.
This is how you have to navigate the world. So therefore, like, it's not about the basketball. You are simply trying to like have to go through your emails.
School of Hard Knocks sim, baby.
They're going to like mail you something soon to whatever address is registered with like some old like DMV from 10 years ago. And if you don't get it, your copy will just snap in half. Like, you got to update your address. Sorry.
Yeah. It like makes you checks your identity before you can do it. It's like, which of these addresses have you ever been associated with? Which of these people are you associated with? I'm just like, these all sound like plausible things.
Maybe I lived there.
Maybe I could have lived there. Who knows?
You open up 2K25 and it's like, hey, we're going to do a soft credit check on you. And if you have below 600, you can't play basketball.
Sorry, that's just the breaks, kid. We know we're going to have to automatically hook up your bank account to the game.
Yeah.
To just retroactively or proactively, I should say, take out money to get your VC points because we know you're going to want it. So
you actually can't play in the NBA yet. You can only play like on the street that you grew up in real life.
Man, definitely. Yeah. We need to bring back NBA Street, college basketball, and NBA 2K and combine them into one game.
I know. It's sounding fun, but the point is, this sucks.
It's a microtransaction nightmare. That ain't fun.
You have to buy a car to be able to get to the park to play basketball.
Yeah, they just start you in like deep poverty. They're like, all right, gotta
yourself
eat
up
this
by
week.
Your bootstraps, buddy.
Sorry, it's the capitalism simulator now. Ooh, it's getting dark. It's getting dark. Anyways, that's what NBA 2K does to us. Apparently, puts us down a dark path. And we don't appreciate that. We like loving our games, not having our games be mean to us.
It's literally preventing you from enjoying the game. Yeah. Like, not in an intentional way where Dragon's Dogma has created like a hostile world to explore, right? There's nothing there. They're just preventing you from playing 2K if you don't check your fucking email.
They have taken my ghoul to jail. They have jailed my child away from me.
Dabo Benquino is in prison right now, and we can't get him out.
So it's sad. It breaks my heart to see what this franchise has become, but now it's just kind of funny to see how they will torment me next.
Yeah, this series really has a bad track record of punishing you specifically.
Yeah, I need to go back and play like 2K9 again and just like experience the beauty of it all.
The bliss, yeah.
The bliss. I'm sure it's on Steam or something. Anyways,
probably.
Let's go on to a good game.
Yeah.
Still playing Mario Wonder. It's excellent. I really love the challenge levels that they have in this game.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like somebody at Nintendo saw all of the creativity and the challenge that people were making these levels in Mario Maker.
Yeah.
And decided that, hey, let's kind of do something similar as little side levels in our game. And I just really love how they are just so mechanically focused, these levels, where it's just platforms. There's not really any theme to the level, right? It's just do the jump good or you're down at the bottom of the tower again. But at the same time, it doesn't seem as punishing as those Mario Maker levels did, right? Because, man, I loved watching the videos of people doing them, but I could never, ever come close to doing that. But what's nice about these ones that Nintendo made, it feels like you get that same sort of feel and experience, but much more accessible. But still challenging, which is nice.
Yeah.
So really enjoy that bit of it. Last game, real quick.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe not real quick, but I'm playing Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier.
Whoa. Okay. Pause. What is The Lost Frontier? What is that game?
It is a Jak and Daxter game on the PSP.
Is this on the like PlayStation Network collection
thing?
They
just released it on the PlayStation Network, and I realized I had never played this Jak and Daxter game.
Yeah. What like model is it after? Like, is it like the first few? Is it like Jak 2 or 3?
It's trying to be, I think it actually canonically happens after Jak 3.
Okay.
Right? So it has that same combat system. It has the guns, right? Except in this one you have a staff gun instead. But there's no like open world because it's on the PSP, right? It's more level focused, more like Jak 1 was, but with the Jak 2 and 3 combat system. But then you also have a plane. You also fly.
Okay, great.
You fly around in this world. So there are dogfighting levels in this game as well as the traditional jump and shoot and hit the creatures levels like in most Jak and Daxter games. It's a very strange game.
Yeah, it sounds odd.
It feels both like an evolution and a devolution of the franchise, which makes sense considering it came out on the PSP, but it's just strange to experience after, Jak 3 was such this massive open world that was so free and like so many different things you could do, and there were the buggies and there were the regular cars and like the hover cars and everything, and so many different guns you could use. And then going back to now using the shoulder buttons to control the camera is a little wonky, to say the least, that the camera is not the best aspect of this game. But I do like some of the things they did, such as they put in a skill tree where in this one you're using different colors of eco to permanently increase or give Jak new powers. Like if you press the punch button, you like send out a blast of yellow eco ahead of you. So you like, it's like a shoot button as well, which is interesting. Or like, of course, just increase your base stats, right? Or like when you do your spin move, you reflect back a projectile that's been fired at you. So it does really expand a lot more on the physical combat of the game, much more than any of the other Jak games did, which I think is pretty interesting and actually pretty fun to do. I think it feels good. They nailed that in this game.
For sure.
And I think that the flying mechanics are surprisingly robust, but not anything revolutionary, right? It's a strange experience to fly these planes because you don't have a good sense of speed. They feel kind of slow, but they make up for that in that there's a lot of action going on at any one point. So you're never not really doing anything. So even though you're not flying around super fast, or at least feeling like you're flying around super fast, you're still doing a lot of stuff and dodging and shooting and positioning yourself like in any like typical dogfighting game you would. Yeah. And that kind of makes sense once again as it being a PSP game, right? You can't make it too fast paced in the air because I don't think that would translate very well to that system. But I think they did a pretty good job of kind of making it work halfway, which I think the PSP is a system with a bunch of games that are like a lot of compromises.
Yes.
Right? But I think they found a nice way to compromise with this aspect of the game that they brought into it with The Lost Frontier. So I did find myself having some fun with the air combat. And of course, you can like upgrade your planes, and they give you actually a lot of different planes to fly around in. And they feel decently different. They're not like amazingly different in how they handle, but different enough to make it feel significant when you get a new one.
Yeah.
But the weirdest thing about the game, and that was the most off-putting to me at first, is Jack. He doesn't feel like Jack. He feels different.
Whoa, why?
Let me check to see if this was actually made by Naughty Dog. I think he was made by someone else.
Yeah, it's high impact games.
So yeah, it's not Naughty Dog. So the character of Jack, they really play up his himbo-ness in this one. Like, it was always a subtext of his character in the other games, but they're really kind of making him a lunk in this game.
Interesting.
So he doesn't feel like Jack. He feels more like Mac, is kind of what I've been calling him.
Different guy.
He's a different guy, and his like facial structure is also much more square, like rectangular head.
Yes, yeah.
Like looking more like John Cena than Jack, which is also a strange design choice. Maybe it's a PSP thing. I don't know. But it definitely shows that this company didn't conceive of this character, because they definitely seem to want to take him in a little bit of a different direction, which is strange because Daxter is like the same. Daxter is the same
his
character.
Perfect.
His character is the same. He acts the same. He looks the same. He sounds the same. Jack is no longer like, you know, the kind of reserved, brooding hero he was, which, you know, is that an interesting character nowadays? No, right?
No, yeah.
But to change him so quickly to kind of like a lunk bonehead, I'm just going to smash and shoot my way out of this problem character. Seems a little strange.
They shaved his little weird green goatee too.
They got rid of his flair.
They got rid of his steeds. Yeah.
He doesn't feel like he's Mac. He's joining the military. He had to shave. God. But yeah, that's probably the strangest part of the game to me. So, I mean, you don't see him or hear him talk too much. And of course, you're like playing the game, he's behind you, so you don't have to see his face too much. But it's just when you see it pop up on screen, it just takes me at least out of the moment a little bit. Like, who is that kind of doppelganger, but not quite like 90% Jack character there?
Yeah, that's Mac and Daxter.
Mac and Daxter. Yeah.
Legally distinct property.
Absolutely. And one final thing about this game that I did really like is that Daxter gets dark eco powers in this one, and he turns into this terrifying, like guinea pig on steroids creature that has a Brooklyn accent.
Okay, now we're talking.
Which somehow works really well, but is absolutely absurd. When it first happens, they don't do it with much fanfare. Like, Daxter just kind of sneaks off and falls down a sewer and falls into a vat of dark eco and turns into this beast and goes on a rampage in the sewers. And I hear this voiceover of this Brooklyn accented person talking, and I'm just like, is this someone controlling Daxter right now? And then after a while I realized, like, oh, it's actually supposed to be Daxter, which was great. I really enjoyed that.
Does he sound like Scratch Bandicoot by any chance?
Oh, he might. This might be Crash Bandicoot fell into some dark eco and it creates Scratch Bandicoot.
Oh, wow. Because, the accent sounds about right.
Are you listening to it?
No, not at all, but just your description of it.
It's wild. It's an interesting game. It's neither good nor bad. I am having a time with it.
I am experiencing life and video games.
Yes. Yeah. It's the most average game I've played in quite some time.
I'm not going to talk about it today, but I also had a really similar experience of playing such a normal video game recently.
Yeah. When they hit you, it just kind of hits this weird middle, like, empty zone in your soul.
Yes,
You're just like, I am like kind of at peace, like meditatively playing this game. It neither fills me with joy nor depresses me or makes me angry. It just is, and we just are together experiencing this moment.
I'll spoil it for when I talk about it in the future, but it's Dead Island 2 was the game that I am having a very similar experience with.
I can see that for sure.
Where I'm like, what is this? Like, came out recently, but it feels like a 2010 game. It's so strange.
Yeah. That's pretty much all I've been playing this week. Chase, what have you been playing?
I have a lot of games.
Let's hear it.
And the reason that I have a lot of games is because all of them are on this little device called the Playdate, David.
Oh, nice.
This is my Playdate episode. I'll
get ready, everybody. we're getting some music for this. It's the Playdate episode.
Maybe I'll just use the same thing I did for Gatefest. This is Datefest. So, like, this is a pretty niche device, so I should explain what the hell this little thing is. There is a very small handheld device. I think it's made by this company called Panic and Teenage Engineering as well.
Okay.
They made this weird little device, and it's been out for like, I want to say a couple years. I'm actually not totally positive about how long it's been there, but
I think it's been a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's been out for a minute. And I think like the marketing around it initially was just like, hey, here's this weird little device that we're building. It's got 2 buttons, direction pad, and a crank that you can crank on the side. It like slips into the console and then you can pull it out and crank it if you need to.
It's the twirly mustache of video game peripherals.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so like I was kind of holding off on it for a while as I was like, that looks interesting, but I don't know if it's enough for me to get it. And I think a lot of that was just like, oh, there's not a ton of games that I'm like, I really need to get this, right? Yeah. They had a very interesting rollout where they were like, whenever you buy one, this is still happening. This is happening to me. They release these games to you for free as part of like a season, they call it. So like when I got the Playdate, I had 2 games that were already preloaded on it. And then every week I get access to new games, right? That they're just part of the console, right? Like,
cool.
It's not like you have to pay for these, which I think is really cool and like a fun way to kind of build hype around like, oh, it's Monday. Like, very exciting. Get new games now.
Sure.
Eventually, like, you know, that season for you personally will end with, you know, whatever the end of it is. I don't even know, but it's not like you just get free games forever. It's just, you know, till you finish this like collection of games. But there were a bunch of games that I was seeing on like itch that I was like, oh man, these look like really good. And I'm really interested in getting them. And I think, so like, and full disclosure here, the device is $200, which like it's high enough to the point where I'm like, oh man, I just don't know if I want to splurge like that. You know? Like you can buy a really good handheld emulator device for $200,
sure can.
You know? And so like, I'm always like, oh, that seems like a really niche device. And like, you know, for anybody looking at it, I think like that it has to come with the understanding that like, that is really niche. This is a very like specific, and the word that keeps coming to mind for me is indulgent product, where like the games look like they're from the Game Boy era or like the NES era. And so it's not like you're paying for like super high fidelity graphics or something. It's sort of, you're paying for like the quality of the hardware and this like experience, because like they've built the software that they've built and the experience of using it is so good that like there's parts of it that feel like incredibly considered, which all of those are awesome. Right. But it has to come with the caveat that like it is more expensive than I think I want it to be. But I was also willing to be like, all right, I'll, you know, dish out the money and try and, you know, play the games that I want to play. I think just something that really was interesting to me too is that like we're coming up on doing this episode or this podcast for 200 episodes, right?
Yeah.
And like something that we are incredibly familiar with at this point doing is going back and playing games from earlier eras. And I think you and I are pretty comfortable with experiencing mechanics that sometimes are like, okay, I see if I can sift through parts of this game, there's really cool stuff in here, right? It's just kind of the other stuff there that is challenging, of like, you know, the UI isn't very good.
Yeah. Or,
you know, it's like pushing a console in a very hard way, right? Like if you think about like Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, that game is like pushing the Super Nintendo as hard as it possibly can.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it can barely keep up a lot of the times. Like the frame rate's really bad. The models are like almost wireframes, you know, like it's doing 3D, but like it doesn't feel like the Super Nintendo was like intended for that to be the thing that it does.
Yeah.
And so you can feel the limits of the console being pushed at that moment. And like, I don't think that a part of like the essence of Star Fox is hardware struggles, you know? And you'll even see like, if you go play the one on N64, it runs great and it feels good even still. And so they've kind of taken that away. And so when we go back and play these older games, it's this experience of like trying to translate what would the concept and the essence of this game be like if we played it in 2024 and removed sort of the cruft, right? We experienced this kind of in real time recently with Ogre Battle 64, where like it was, both of us were like, this is really interesting and really cool. And I wish it like a lot of it was a little bit better, because like the core of it is really cool. It's really fun, of this kind of like RTS real-time thing on a console that isn't, super challenging as far as the complexity goes. And then, Unicorn Overlord comes out and answers that question very directly of like, what does that look like now?
Here it is.
And I think for me personally, going back and playing games from the Game Boy era are like incredibly, like that feeling is incredibly present of like, wow, there's some really cool shit in here. And also like it doesn't run great, or it takes forever to load, or like the UI is really bad or something like that.
Yeah.
And so this device is sort of the opposite of that. And I think it's why it's so interesting to me is that like most of these games look like they maybe could have come out in some fantasy version of like 1990 or 1995. But you can feel that like this is a 2024 game in so many ways, right? Like we've learned so much since 1989, which is when the first Game Boy came out. We've learned a lot about like what user interface should look like for a very tiny device or something like that. That's 30 years of iterating on ideas like that. And so like the user interface is much better. And like the considerations for like what makes a good game are different now. When you go back and play something from the SNES, you can really see how focused games were on like shooting dudes and beating dudes up and shit like that. Whereas like the games that are coming out on this, while they look like they are restricted by a similar kind of hardware, or at least like a similar form factor, they're totally different. They're so different video games. And even the ones that are like trying to harken back to an earlier era are like, oh, I can definitely see where you have chosen to like diverge from what these games were doing in the 90s or the 2000s or the 80s or whatever. And like you were saying with the PSP, it feels like a lot of the focus of that era of games, like with the PSP and like some of the GBA was like, we're going to try and recreate an okay version of a console experience. Like they're very much trying to be like, what if we could have like 50% of that game on the handheld?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I remember that being like a common desire from people at the time, or at least like, the stuff that got published and people talked about was like, the dream is being able to play, Jak and Daxter on handheld, right? If I could play Jak 3
in your hand.
Right. Yeah. That bit of marketing was very compelling for people at the time. But I think having the distance from it, you can feel now that like the stuff that really still works and has stood the test of time, it's not those games, right? It's the ones that are like, I know exactly what the Game Boy Advance is capable of, and I'm designing the game for that, rather than like, okay, if we can imagine, how do I play Jak and Daxter with 2 buttons and a directional pad? That doesn't always work the same. And so the games that are considered for the hardware have like done really well. And I think that like the dam kind of broke with the Switch, where the Switch like very much was the moment where like the console is on your handheld for the most part, right? Like you can at this point say like, oh, the graphics aren't as good as a PlayStation 5 for sure. But like for the most part, there's a lot of games that are console quality games that you can just play on the Switch. I downloaded all of the Personas on my Switch and they're all like great. They all play amazing. And so I think that the desire for the mobile console in your hand, people kind of got it. And so they're like, okay, done. What now? Yeah, it's been done a little bit. And not that that's like boring. It's just like we've figured it out. We have a place for that now. And I think the Playdate is sort of saying like, what if we tried to do that earlier kind of Game Boyish era, but the intent was this is the console that we're making games for specifically, rather than like, what if I ported Bloodborne to the Playdate or something like that, like it's not going to work. So like what game is actually fun here? And I've played a lot of them because they're very cheap and not very long.
Great.
Which is amazing. So I'm just going to start going down the list. I probably won't get to all of the games that I have.
You are here to answer this question.
Yes. Yeah. I'd asked a handful of people in the Discord too, like, hey, if I was going to talk about Playdate games, like, are there any that I should definitely bring? And a handful of people gave me a lot of answers. I definitely haven't covered all of them, but I've got a couple. So just real quick, thanks to Sliver-Handed, GJ, Rob, and Peter for sending in some games for me to check out.
Okay, awesome.
So the first one I want to talk about, and the one that definitely was the game where I was like, that looks really good, and I can't believe that's on the Playdate, is this game called Under the Castle. This was a game that was made, the credits listed as Danny Diaz, Z Corbs, and Volcano Bites. It seems just to be some people.
Great.
Some of them are like an actual name of a company, but this is just like seems to be a handful of folks. So cool. This came out pretty recently. It came out in December, and like the game is essentially a dungeon crawler, like and specifically a roguelike dungeon crawler. You show up and you're in just like this castle courtyard, and there's an old guy in the courtyard who's like, we need to like get the castle back, and the way to do that is to delve into these dungeons and like accomplish certain goals. There's like three different paths you can go down. One of them is like you have to beat enemies in this dungeon. The other one is you have to rescue people. The other one's you have to like find these orbs or whatever. And once you accomplish that goal, there's like an exit that opens up and you have to get there. And that's like pretty much the game. Anytime you beat one of those, you're just able to go lower into that dungeon specifically. So the first, level for the beat enemies one is like you have to beat one enemy this time. And then you beat that, escape, and then it's like, okay, you're now in level 2 where you have to beat 2 enemies, or it just kind of progresses from there. And the way that the actual like game plays out is that it is do you remember that game Fatal Labyrinth that we played a while back?
Yeah.
Where the way that the game works is that everything is stationary until you decide to do something. That is how this game works, where it's like grid based. So you just kind of like move your character, one block to the left or right. And whenever you do that, the enemies also do something, right?
Yeah.
So they might just be on a path of going left and right, and then they see you, and then they will come try and get you. You can also just like press B to wait a turn and just kind of like let them come to you. And then once they get to you, it's like you just press towards them and that will attack them. And it just kind of goes in turns, right? So you usually just kind of swap blows with people. And that's like most of it, right? There's like, you have like 8 item slots on your character. And in any of these dungeons, you can pick up shit like a health potion or a better sword or like a shield or something. And each time you pick up a new item, you can just choose that from the outset. So like if you going into a new dungeon and last round you picked up a sword, you can choose that again. It's just unlocked from now on. Cool. And but you, again, with some of those, it's like with the orb level, you have to make sure that you aren't just like, you don't have 8 slots full of items, because one of them the orb will take up an item slot. So you have to kind of be considerate about what you're bringing. Gotcha. It's just so good. It is. And this is a thing that I have found for each one of these games, is that it is so good for like 5 minutes of a game. Like, sure, you can definitely play more than that, but it is so good for like, let's see, my wife and I are going to go to dinner here in a second, and I'm ready kind of early. I don't really want to like sit down and turn on my console and start playing.
That'll take 5 minutes.
That'll take 5 minutes. Whereas this one, I can just pop into this game real quick and do a whole run in like just a few minutes. So that part of it is just phenomenal. The art is just like shocking. It's just like this gorgeous pixel art. And again, because the screen is so small, it's like you don't need a ton of detail for it to look really good, but like it looks great. I have to imagine that the internals of this thing are like vastly superior to like a Game Boy or something like that, because nothing is challenging this console at all. There's no slowdown, like everything runs perfectly. And so like they can really put a lot of detail into this art, and they seemingly don't have to really struggle with like, oh, the console can't handle it or something like that. Maybe they're doing some kind of optimization behind the scenes to make sure that that's the case, but like it looks really, really good. Like if you imagine like, the best GBA or the best SNES games that you've seen, it's that kind of stuff. And like, again, it's all monochromatic. It's black and white. And so you don't really even have to deal with color. It's just, it's cool shit. So I was like really, really impressed with this. This was the game that I saw on Itch, and I was like, oh boy, I think I have to get a Playdate. Like this just looks too good. Yeah. And I think that this one's like, it really delivered for me. It feels like I wouldn't say like a console experience, but it feels like a full game. I feel like I can still sort of like experience everything that it has to offer in a way that's like genuinely very good and very fun.
How is the crank used? This is my question for all of the games.
Yeah, I will answer that for each one of these. In this one, the crank is if ever you need to get over a pit or something, what you can do is crank it one direction and your character will pull themselves up into their magical wizard hat, and you can just sort of float across the gap. You only have 10 mana, so each little cube that you move
is one.
It's one, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't just float around the level forever like that. And when you're done, you just crank it the other direction and comes back out of the hat.
Do you ever think about Soulja Boy when you're using the crank?
I'm thinking about Soulja Boy all the time. I'm always cranking that Soulja Boy, man.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So it's a get in the hat and get out of the hat crank for this game.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. Hat crank.
It seems like a lot of the games fall into one of two categories of the crank is a integral part of this video game, and you should always have your hand on the crank, or like this is mostly a Game Boy game and we have a crank here too.
Gotcha. And we got a crank.
And like, again, it feels good to use. So I'm never bummed out when I have to crank it a little bit, you know?
Does it feel sturdy, the crank? Can you like really crank it?
There's not a lot of like friction that resists against you, but you can crank it pretty quickly. Like the whole thing is it's like a little tiny thin brick. And so it feels very sturdy. I'm never worried like, oh, I'm going to rip this thing off or anything like that.
I like to crank, so if I got this, I need to know, is the crank sturdy?
This is tested by Soulja Boy, who did nothing but crank it.
I mean, they're missing out if they're not getting Soulja Boy on this.
Yeah, it's true. That's real. So the next game that I've got is a game called Blockbuster, David.
Ooh, are you like breaking blocks? Are you busting blocks?
Yes.
Great.
This is a game, the developer was called Dardoyle, and...
Dardoyle?
Dardoyle. This is somehow a shocking twist on like a Tetris game almost.
Ooh.
So the way that this game works is that you are presented with a 5x5 tiles, or a 5x5 grid, and it's empty, right? There's nothing in it. And you are a piece of like, it's essentially a tetreme now, you know, like the little like T thing, or the like one that looks like a Z or anything like that.
Sure.
They have more than that, but all of those are in there. You're handed one of those, and you can move it up, down, left, or right. Or if you want to rotate it, you crank it.
Ooh.
Which is very fun. This one feels totally crank necessary. Like, couldn't get through without the crank.
Really crank coded on this one.
Very crank coded. And there's also this like timer at the top of the screen, which is just represented by like, it looks like kind of a pie that's slowly losing volume. I guess not like a pie that you can eat, but just like a circle that has like some stuff out of it, some space coming out of it. It's a clock, you know? And once that runs out of time, the tile is placed wherever it is, like wherever on the grid that you have it. And so you're sort of encouraged to find a good spot for the piece, right? Like you don't want a big nasty Z piece right in the middle of the grid that might fuck you up a little bit.
Yeah.
And whenever there is either a vertical or a horizontal line on the grid, those blocks will clear and you'll get points for that.
Great.
And so, you know, it's kind of Tetris-y in that way of like, you're just trying to make these lines wherever you can, but it forces you to think also in two dimensions, right? Where Tetris is just like, you just need to make these lines, right? The way that the game sort of like balances the difficulty of this is that if at any point you run out of time, it'll just put the block wherever, right? Which is, you know, challenging. But if any of your tiles overlap with another one, like one that's already been placed, then you will lose health. And you have like, I think it's like 10 points of health or something like that. And so, you know, of course, in very standard Tetris game design, the clock starts to speed up and you start making mistakes, and there are more blocks that, you know, will start to overlap over each other. You lose health and you lose the game. Right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. There's like different ways that you can play. Like there's endurance and challenge mode and shit like that. And God, I can't believe this game. It is so addicting. It's so much fun. It's really, really good. I think like some of these games can feel like, oh, this feels almost like a mobile game, but I think my brain is just misremembering what Game Boy games were like, because this feels like a Game Boy game.
Sure.
But another one where it's just like, God, this feels so good to play in a way that I never experienced on the Game Boy outside of like Tetris, actual Tetris.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is just like the details, right? It is how it feels to move the blocks, how it feels to rotate the blocks. Just the UI design of the clock being so easily seeable from the game board, being able to like hold a piece and like, you know, swap them out if you need that. All of that just feels like such like modern considerations in a way that just makes the game so much fun. And again, just like perfect for those, like, I got 10 minutes. I can play a bunch of rounds of Blockbuster.
Great.
You know, it's really, really good. This is just like a rock solid video game in like the classic, most classic sense, right? It's not trying to do anything like story wise. It's just like purely a mechanical block experience. And it totally rocks. It's so much fun. So yeah, I've been enjoying this one a lot. It's super good for that experience.
Awesome.
Let's see. Another one I wanted to talk about was this game called Resonant Tale. This is a game from Orange Thief is the developers.
Okay.
This is definitely a game that has been inspired by Zelda.
Great.
It is a top-down, definitely like kind of Link's Awakening era of Zelda. Looks like that. It's a little bit more pulled back, like camera wise, like you can see less of the board, or sorry, you can see more of the board, but the less detail, right? It is a very, you do have to kind of like look for like, where's my character on the screen right now?
Yeah.
But it is, and I say this with so much love, it reminds me a lot of the Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls, David.
Ooh.
Which is phenomenal and so good.
That's a big comparison.
I know. I think a lot of it is that, like, in even the Zeldas from that era, right, from Link's Awakening, like, combat is a big thing that they're doing, right, of being able to swing your sword is a big part of that game. You don't even really get a sword in this game for a while. Like, I was like half an hour to an hour into it before they really even gave me one of those. And even then, the combat is just, it's bump combat, like Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls or Fatal Labyrinth or Under the Castle. And I think like the prevalence of that as a way to do combat on the system is just like, it feels so considered. It seems like everybody's like, well, is swinging a sword fun on this kind of smallish screen? You know, like, is this console the best place for like twitchy action video games?
Sure.
And like the answer is kind of no, right? Like I think it's much more fun to put the emphasis, and this game does this, on exploration and adventure and like a quest, right? Like it is taking the stuff that is fun about Zelda, sort of minus the combat, and the Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls, where it's just like you're on this kind of grand, interesting adventure. Yeah. And that's like the kind of draw of it. There's this story going on with these like bells that are you're trying to collect them. There's like this person you run into who's like, oh, we need to collect all the bells, and like that's our quest for the moment. I was momentarily like, is this like an intentional nod to the Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls? Like, there's enough here that I'm like, I wonder if that's the case.
Could be. I
messaged the developers on Mastodon. I was like, hey, did you play Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls? And they're like, no. But thanks for playing. Because I was asking specifically, when you die, the phrase comes up on the screen, the bell tolls for you, or something like that. And I was like, oh, it's got to be it. And they're like, no. But they're very kind about it. It was very nice of them to like just respond to this rando on Mastodon being like, did you play this video game?
Screaming into the void.
Yeah. It was a very, very kind response. Awesome. But yeah, I think just like the sense of adventure in this game is really, really incredible. There's like a playfulness to it in the way that are present in both of those games, of like, it's very humorous. Like people are very funny in the game. There's a lot of like, not irreverence, but like silliness that happens throughout the whole thing. Yeah. Right. Of like a lot of gags happening, where there's a section where you're like, you get thrown in jail in a castle and you have to escape. And once you get, anytime that you see a guard in the castle, they'll take you back to the cell and you have to try and sneak past them again. Once you get outside of the castle, there's another guard across the bridge, and he will say the same thing like when he sees you or when you interact with him that the guards were saying in there, of like, halt, you need to stop, right? Yeah. He'll say that and then be like, what's going on? How's it going? They haven't told me anything about what's going on in the castle, so I'm just hanging out here. How are you doing? Like, not knowing that you were a prisoner of the castle. Very funny. Very fun.
That's
like,
pretty good.
Kind of cheeky, So all that's like really wonderful. I'm really enjoying all of that. I think the combat is, again, just like great. All you have to do is just like bump into someone and you will attack them with your sword. Love it. Like that's perfect for this kind of hardware. And you eventually start to get like more Zelda stuff. There's like bombs and stuff like that. It's just a joy. I think that like, I am glad that on this console, you can be like, I wouldn't say unabashed, but like proud of the influence of a game like Zelda and still make something that is like totally unique in a lot of ways. Yeah. Another thing that they had seemingly drawn inspiration from is in Link's Awakening, there's this kind of longer quest line where you have to you get essentially like a paper clip and you have to trade it to one person in another part of the town. They'll give you dog food or something. And then you give it to somebody else.
It's like those people on the internet who will barter a paper clip to get a Lamborghini or something eventually.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The same kind of thing is here where they, start you off with something menial and you just kind of go around and look for I wonder who would like this, right? Or I wonder who I've run into already that might have something for me. And a lot of people do. So I think that's just such a fun thing to inherit, especially in a game where combat's not the focus here. And so just kind of endearing you to the people in the villages and the items and shit like that it's a really smart decision. And I think even more so, it's really fascinating to see the frog for whom the bell tolls be the sort of mold for Link's Awakening, right? It was used as a base for that game when they went to make Link's Awakening. And then for this game to definitely be inspired by Link's Awakening and Zelda, and then to kind of come back around seemingly unknowingly, right? They didn't even directly cite the frog for whom the bell tolls, but they've come back to the same decision about let's make bump combat and let's make the focus just more on the adventure of this game. Yeah. So it's really kind of a joy to see. Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the stuff that feels more modern is just the writing in it feels very 2024, not in a meme way or something like that, but just it feels very considered and funny. And the parts that are unnecessary are just very stripped back to what is only required. A weird theme for today, actually, now that I'm speaking that out loud, of just taking everything that you don't need and stripping it back to the bones, the lowest component you can. Sure. Yeah. And that being the game.
I see what you're saying.
So anyway, Resonant Tale, really, really like it. I think I'm close to the end of it. I don't think it's very long. And I'm almost definitely going to beat it. It's been a joy so far.
How do you use the crank?
This one, I've only had to use it once, and it's kind of a funny situation in which you would use it. So I don't want to ruin it for somebody who, it's kind of a thing you're supposed to figure out at some point.
It's a secret crank.
It's a secret cranker. Yeah.
Sweet. Cool.
Yeah. So that is Resonant Tale. The last game that I want to bring up is a bit of a barn burner. It was kind of a surprise to me to see this game on the Playdate.
Call of Duty.
This is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
The crank is a minigun.
The crank is a gun. Now, it is this game called Mars After Midnight, which is a game by Lucas Pope, who also made Papers, Please and Return of the Obra Dinn.
Whoa.
That was my reaction too of what are you doing here?
Yeah.
all of the games that I have seen so far and all of the people that I've been experiencing from, they're developers who I've never heard of, or at least haven't realized that I've heard of before, which is to me kind of a cool thing. That's a sweet space to be wow, look at all these DIY developers just throwing out this cool little idea for a game. But I was hey, that's kind of a big name indie developer. I want to see what Lucas Pope has cooked up. So the game is the farthest from a Game Boy game that I have ever seen on this console. It's the farthest reaches of what a video game can be on this. Essentially, you are playing as this three-eyed bird creature on Mars.
Cool.
Who runs a community center that only opens after midnight. And
whoa.
Yeah.
What?
During the day, the building is a manufacturing site or something like that. But after midnight, it turns into a community center. And so your job is to essentially run that place, which entails letting the correct people in for whatever the session is that night. So the very first level is, hey, tonight is Cyclops anger management. And you only can let Cyclopses in. And so a big part of the game, and this is very Papers, Please in the most hilarious way, is that you crank to open up the peephole in the door.
Ooh, and nice use the crank.
Yes, great crank usage. And you look around at the person outside the door to see is this person a Cyclops? And they have to be mad too. Because the little sign on the peephole, when you close it, it's okay, so nobody with more than one eye. And if they're a happy Cyclops, don't let them in because they don't need anger management. But if they're an angry looking Cyclops, then you let them in. And so the initial part of the game is just identifying is this the correct person to be in the session tonight? And then whoever that is will go over and go to your refreshments table and properly eat something and totally make a mess of the place. And so you have to go over there as this bird creature and use your tentacle arms to pick everything up off the table, use the crank to bring out the like sweep-o-matic thing that cleans the table off, and then put everything back down in like the order that it needs to be placed.
Wow. So
bizarre. This is the strangest mechanics for a video game, but like it is enthralling, David. I'm having a great time when I'm playing this.
It's got you, huh?
It's really got me. I think that like part of it is it's very funny. Like all of the sessions are hilarious. Like another one was knife safety classes.
Ooh.
And so you had to get very important. You had to buy a magnifying glass so that whenever a gnat would knock on your door, you put your magnifying glass up to look at them, and if they had a knife, then you can let them in. But if they don't, you don't. It's just so very funny. It's so good. A gnat
with a knife under a magnifying glass. That's great.
And it's just like a tiny little creature with like a very accurate, detailed knife that they're holding.
It's like a knife they got from a Renaissance fair or something. Just like the most intricate thing you've seen in your life.
It's like like Krauser's combat knife from Resident Evil 4 is the kind of shit they're dragging around. So funny. So there's that, but then there's also this, like, once you finish the day, a couple things happen. It asks you like, okay, plan the next day's session, right? And all the while, also, I forgot about this, but if you let someone in that is like supposed to be there, at the end of the night, they will give you money for being like, oh, this session was great. Thank you.
Oh, cool.
Or if they liked the refreshments, they will also tip you for that too.
Solid.
And so you get like some credits for this, and that allows you to, plan the next day's dealings of like, okay, tomorrow I want to throw the farty party, which is an option.
That's really an option. Like you get to choose different things. And you choose the farty party.
There, like you can plan the sessions, right? So like you can choose the gnat knife safety party. Yes, exactly, the farty party. And so you open the door, and then if they make like a farting sound, then you let them in.
Great.
So funny. Really, really good gag. But you can plan that, and then it also shows on a map like where the people are in the colony that you're living in, and like where you need to advertise to pull them in, right?
Sure.
And so it'll say like, okay, you've got flyers up in this section, and that only covers 4 of the 6 creatures. So you need to go put some more flyers up, and you just choose on the map like where to put them up. And then it'll also show you like, okay, what refreshments do you want? Do you want, I think it's like the clobfish is one of them, or like, a pie or something like that.
Clobfish, like the clob from GoldenEye?
No, not. Oh my God. No. What a pull, David.
That's what I think of when I think clob.
Yeah, that's true. It just seems to be a fish. I might also be wrong about the name of it, but you can choose any of those, and all of them like cost money, right? So you have to kind of be careful with like, did I make enough? Did I let the right people in? That sort of stuff. And it is sort of the joyous version of Papers, Please, because you are trying to let the people in who need help. Like for the session that night, right? It's not this sort of like you get into the country or not.
Sure.
Even though you might need it. It's not that. It's you're here to help some people, these weird little creatures who, like I read today, they're procedurally generated, which is sort of shocking. Because like each one of these monsters looks like so designed. I'm like, how the hell did they manage to pull this off?
That's impressive.
It's very cool. But I think to add to all of that, the game also has these like strangely moving and tender moments where like when you go home, your bird person like hangs out and like clearly has like an internal life. But the other, the person who accompanies you is also the machine that receives tips for like during the day. And so it just unplugs from the wall and comes with you to your apartment and like goes to bed on the floor with you. You also get these like very close up scenes of the bird sometimes where they're just like, it's like if you clean up the station and then you hear a knock at the door, sometimes you'll get these like incredibly close up pictures of the bird like looking out the corner of their eye to the door. And I don't know, just something about the framing of it is like very evocative in a strange way.
Sure.
It goes a long way to like characterize who these people are, or at least like who this bird is and its compatriot that is the computer. Anyway, even when you go to the apartment and go to bed, there's like these little thought clouds that come down and like shows what each of the people are dreaming of. The first night for the bird, it was like a volcano, and for the computer, it was like one of those wind up keys for like a strange device or something like that.
Interesting.
It's just incredibly funny. Reminds me a lot of Real Monsters from Nickelodeon back in the day.
Yeah,
where there's just all these like weird, strange creatures,
weird little guys.
So many weird little guys.
There's weird little guys.
Yes, yeah. There's so many of them, and I think the game is like, it's very kind to you and the creatures. Like eventually you can buy a little device that like translates what they're saying. And like no one's ever rude. And they're usually saying like, great, hey, thank you. Or like that session was really good. That helped a lot. Thank you. And like, I don't know. I like on paper, this game seems very simple, but I love that it is mostly just driving you forward of like, hey, more people on Mars need help. And you're going to be somebody who can help them. Like at the end of the day, it says how many people are left who need help. Like, hey, 60 more Martians need your help.
Gotta go help them.
Gotta go help them. And so it's like sort of like I said, the weird mirror inverse of Papers, Please, where it's just kind of a joy and it's funny and fun. And like, you know, if you're comparing this against like the Obra Dinn, which was like a master class of, what is it? A Metroid Brainia, where like you have to put together what happened on this ship where people got murdered and shit like that. It is not that. It is not that complicated. It is much more just a funny romp where you're cranking to open a little peephole and then let in the weirdo who has showed up, you know, who needs Cyclops anger management or something like that. It's so much fun. I think like this game for me has encapsulated the most about what I like about this, because it is so different than so many other games from the Game Boy era, and is also just bizarre in a way that like, I don't know a lot of other places that you could do this, right? Like you could probably put this out on Steam or something.
Sure.
But like, I think it's so cool to have it be tied to this control scheme. And
it needs
like,
the crank, huh?
It needs the crank, I think, to open the hole, right? Like you got to check out what's behind the peephole with the crank. And like, you know, I'm sure this could work on a computer, but I just think that like it's so clearly designed with the Playdate in mind. And I think there's something just so joyous and miraculous about that they've made fun on this weird lo-fi device, you know? So that's the one that's really like been kind of like inspiring for me to play at the very least. Like all of these games are amazing and incredible in their own right, but this one has like opened my mind to like, there's so much potential on this little thing. Absolutely. You could make so many strange games that are kind of just setting a vibe and like have these like very simple mechanics, but are still so much fun to play. So that's Mars After Midnight. I have more games, but I have to wait to talk about more of them. There's just so many of these.
Those are great games. Those sound all really fun.
They're all very good, which is like sort of shocking. I think when I think about like a new console launching, or even like an old console that's just around, like there's so much cruft and like old nasty stinky games that are on this console. So like, hey, I like those too, but there's something really nice about like having this kind of curated list of games that are all like pretty good. And I think that the Playdate also, it's again shocking that like autosave is in this game or on this thing, which is not a thing on like a Game Boy, but their catalog of games is also really good. They have like an e-store where you can just like log on from the Playdate and be like, what's good on this console? And they've got like, hey, here's our editor's picks for 2023, or like, here's games that are really popular or just released or something like that. Again, it's like this out of place, out of time console, because like the Game Boy definitely did not have any of that, right? Like there was not an online store or a curated list. Like discoverability was a challenging thing in that era. Like, did you hear about it? And does Blockbuster actually have it? You know,
sure.
Versus like all of the games are out there, even the ones from Itch, like they might not be on the official store, but they're like exceptionally easy to put on the Playdate. You log onto their website and you say, hey, I have a zip file of a Playdate game that I would like to put on my Playdate, and you just drag it from your computer, and it's like, great. Whenever you log onto your Playdate the next time, it'll be there. Like you just got to go download it. Just like, that's fucking crazy. How do you do that?
That's wild.
It's wild. It's so impressive and so cool. So like, I think that all of that stuff, the usability of this thing is just outrageous. It is incredibly easy to play. The battery life is bananas, and it takes like 15 minutes to charge to full. Dang. It's crazy.
It's going for convenience, it seems like.
Convenience, and just like, I think that having devices, and I think Brendan Bigley had talked about this on a couple of podcasts in his blog Wavelengths, where like when you have a device that is intended to do everything, it is almost overwhelming in a lot of ways to be like, I want to play this specific thing.
Absolutely.
But to have a device that's like, hey, we got 2 buttons, a directional pad, and a crank, man, and here's the 10 games that you've got, that's like very fun and freeing in a way. We're like, I'm not going to get distracted. I'm not going to be tempted to like mess with the settings or anything like that. It's just like, you just play the fucking game. That's it.
Yeah. Choice paralysis is a thing. It's
yes,
real.
yeah. And so when I've got 5 games that I can play, it's much easier to be like, well, am I in the mood for Resonant Tale, Blockbuster, or Mars After Midnight, or Under the Castle? Which one of them is it going to be?
It's got to be one of them.
It's going to be one of them. And like, you know, just kind of follow your heart. Follow your heart. You know?
Wow.
So I'm really enjoying the Playdate. Like I said, it is indulgent in the price tag that it has, but I feel very good about this thing. And I just think it's so cool that somebody can put together like a very small game, you know, for $5 or something like that. And I can play the whole thing and be like, that rocked. That was good as hell. Very, you know, very do it yourself in a way that is cool. And like on the website, they're very encouraging of like, hey, you should make your own game. Here's the things that you would need to do that for or do that with, right? Like they have an SDK. You just need to like learn Lua and C and like, you'll be all right. You can build it. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. So yeah, that's the Playdate. That's what I've been playing, which will all bring me to my Podtimistic thing of the week, David.
Which is?
It's an interesting control scheme.
Ooh, absolutely. Jet Li's Rise to Honor.
Jet Li's Rise to Honor. Man, that was a quick pull. That was really fast that you grabbed Jet Li's Rise to Honor.
That one always comes to mind.
It comes to mind for me too. That one is definitely on my mind.
It sticks in the craw.
It really does. But still, like I got done saying an interesting control scheme. I got to the letter E in scheme and you're like, I've got it.
I know what I'm going to say.
Yeah. So yeah, love that. Obviously the Playdate is the thing that made me think about this, but like there's all kinds of stuff. The fucking gyroscope in the WarioWare game for Game Boy Advance.
WarioWare
that
Twisted.
was awesome.
So good.
WarioWare Twisted.
The DS just in general.
The whole thing. Yeah. Yeah. Hell man. DDR Rock Band.
Ooh.
Come on.
Absolutely.
Come on.
How could you say no to those games?
I can't.
Katamari Damacy.
Oof, true, man. It's shocking that that game feels as good as it does. Because like I feel like the Katamari is so often not doing what I want it to do, but that feels intentional.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to control this big fucking ball, and that's like not easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes the moments where you're like rolling up a truck feel like, oh my God, I'm invincible.
Yep.
I've made it.
And then like I always loved going back and forth really quick on the control sticks to make it speed up and go super fast. Ooh, always felt good. Always felt good.
Especially if you roll up most of the shit, like you don't just like slam into something at the end of that.
Cooking with gas.
And Steel Battalion, David.
Ooh, yeah, the Wii in general. Steel Battalion. Oh man, Red Steel. Oh, Steel Battalion is the one with the fucking. I thought you meant Red Steel. Steel Battalion is like 500 buttons or something like that.
Yeah, I never played that, but it looked very fun.
The chainsaw controller for the GameCube.
Oh my God, it's so wild.
The bongo drums.
True. Yeah, interesting control scheme. It's very cool.
Love it.
Do you have something fueling your sense of optimism, David?
I do.
What is it?
It's Nintendo's April Fool's jokes that they did.
Oh my God, dude.
The Virtual Boy Pro was really funny. I enjoyed that video a lot. They put a lot of effort into this silly little joke, which I appreciated.
Yes, yeah.
And then the Pokemon Sleep World Championships.
Oh my God, yeah, that was pretty funny.
Also
I like
good.
that one a lot.
Also good. So yeah, I just like it when a company goes out of their way to do something funny and just irreverent. And it's not for anything. It's just be like, hey, it's a joke. Have fun with it. Like, wow.
I think it's such a hard line to hit. The Pokemon Sleep Championships is really funny because like it's clearly a joke. The Virtual Boy one, I'm like, that's such a bad idea.
Yeah, when I saw the title, I was like, what's going on here? I was a little curious.
But like there's part of me that like you might be able to make that work, Nintendo.
The Virtual Boy was just the Playdate of its day.
It's true.
Too early.
I actually think the Playdate's doing a little bit better than the Virtual Boy. I haven't gotten a severe red headache from playing the Virtual Boy yet.
The red migraine.
Although something I failed to mention is that the screen is not backlit on the Playdate.
Ooh, retro.
And like it is, yeah, exactly. I will say it is very reflective, and so you can like catch light pretty easily. But like I will say it looks much better if you're just blasting your like phone's light onto it.
Sure.
And you know, there's something cozy about that for me. Just having to finagle my body in a way to play this thing to get just like the best light above it.
Are there Playdate accessories that attach onto it that are magnifying glasses and lights combos?
I haven't seen them yet, if there are.
There's gotta be.
But yeah, I would definitely buy an old Game Boy light to put on my Playdate.
Wouldn't be too hard to finagle it on there, right?
Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. I'm going to Japan soon, and like they have a very good used market for shit like that. And so I wonder if I should just grab a Game Boy like Light if I can find one. Anyway, David, do you want to move on to our main thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Hey, welcome to Good Games. It's the segment where we talk about the okayest games of yesteryear and talk about the things that we love about them. We got another listener suggestion, this one coming from Donnie W. Thank you, Donnie. Donnie had suggested Titan Souls.
Yes.
Had you heard of this game, David?
I had not, but I'm always a little bit interested in any game that has souls in it because I enjoy that punishing formula.
I feel like it's always kind of a flex to put souls directly in the name of the game.
It's like going up to home plate and just like pointing to the back wall. I'm like, home run, here we go.
Here it is. Yeah. It's kind of a flex, but this game also came out in 2015, which I feel like was kind of just before like every single game was like, hey, we're also souls like, yeah. And so it's like, it I don't know, it's like almost before that wave and they're like, hey, us, like we're also influenced by Souls, but like nobody else is quite yet. That's not totally true. There was definitely games around then, but like it feels like it was on the earlier side.
Yeah, I agree.
Donnie had said sort of similar stuff. It said, years before I understood what a Souls-like was and having no frame of reference, I found this game on a Steam sale. A game that looks like a pixel art Zelda with no enemies between bosses, equipped with only a bow and a single arrow. You have to call back after you shoot, dodging difficult bosses in an effort to collect the souls of the defeated enemies, I think. Because there is no clear indicator of why you have come to this temple or what you aim to do, my first run, I died nearly 400 times beating this game, but my third run, I died 9 times in 10 bosses. Fun, fast, and doesn't take forever to beat. Give it a try. And we did. Thank you, Donnie.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's bizarre playing this game because, it's definitely like from that era, but the like tenets of Souls-likes hadn't quite been established yet.
Sure, I see that. Still a little nebulous at the time.
Yeah, exactly. But before we get too far, David, can I hit you with some hot stats?
Please.
Hot stats.
This one came out 2015, April 14th of 2015, in fact, for Windows, Mac, PS4, and Vita, baby.
Oh, and Vita. Wow.
And Vita.
A flex.
Just to put that into context, this was a month after Bloodborne had come out, just to kind of like contextualize when on the Soulsborne like timeline we are. So Dark Souls 1 and 2 had already come out and like Bloodborne just popped off.
It just had become Soulsborne timeline.
Yes. Yeah. It was just Souls up to that point. And like, I might be misremembering. It may just be like my own understanding, but I feel like around this time was when it really started hitting like a fever pitch of people being like, listen, Dark Souls 1 rocked. Dark Souls 2 is a little bit more, not received poorly, but not as well. Not as well as Dark Souls 1. I think a lot of people still liked it and they were still like, this is still very fun. But I think Bloodborne sort of solidified like, okay, they're doing something here and they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You saw a lot of people talking about it online. So there was a lot of like hype around that. This was made by Acid Nerve is the developer who made this. So
good name.
Yeah, it's pretty good. The only thing that I recognized them for was this and Death's Door as well.
They made Death's Door. I see that.
I know.
Definitely see that.
It's so interesting because like the way that the character moves feels so similar. I think the dodge roll specifically is like
the dodge roll.
I was like the same thing.
I couldn't place my finger on it when I was playing. I'm like, this feels familiar, but no, Death's Door for sure. Wow.
There's also, it was really cool to realize that. I think there's also like, this game is incredibly sparse in its storytelling, but there is like a tone that both of these games are very good at setting. There's kind of like an unsettlingness about the whole, like each of those games.
Yeah, a starkness to the world that is.
Yeah.
It bellies a deeper, darker underbelly.
Yeah, for sure. It's very cool to see this part of it and then see them executing very well on Death's Door. I do have a review from 4players.de, DE standing for Deutschland.
Oh.
Yes, this is a German outlet.
German time.
I have taken the review from 4players.de. I ran it through Google Translate a number of times, one language into another, to mangle it up real good and get sort of an artist's interpretation of what they had to say, which I will read for you now, David. Flying Titan gives you an amazing journey through space. Titan Souls does that. Simple pixelated art captures my brain and soothing music transport me to magic. Tempers rise and decisions must be made quickly because death is the most important thing before the sound of battle. Enjoy, quote, flower, slice of life, unquote. Unfortunately, this trend died. These changes are quite steep because they don't reflect who I am. So Titan Souls wasn't gifted to someone I care about. Sometimes it's hard. And they gave that a 77 out of 100.
Because it doesn't reflect who they are.
I guess so. Yeah, they really wanted this. They wanted to see themselves in Titan Souls.
In Titan Souls. I wanted to be one of the Titans.
I don't think I do want to be one of the Titans.
No.
It seems like a pretty bad gig.
Doesn't seem great.
We've already kind of touched on it, but do you want to go over like what this game is?
Yeah, it is a top-down, I guess you could call it like a Zelda-like action-oriented game where you are one person and you have a bow and one single arrow that you can recall to yourself and a dodge button, dodge roll and a sprint button. And you have to go around fighting these giant, very difficult bosses one by one and collect their souls to open a big old door. So that's pretty much the gist of it. It's an open world. You can kind of go and attack any boss that you want at any given time. Yeah,
it's a very concise game, all things considered. How'd you feel about this game?
I really enjoyed this game.
I did too. Yeah,
like definitely in the gameplay mechanics, you see the Dark Souls inspiration.
For sure.
I felt like in the overarching feel of the world, I got more Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, baby.
Absolutely.
That's all I was thinking about when I was playing this game.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is a 32-bit version, pixel version of Shadow of the Colossus with some Dark Souls combat. This is great. I love this.
It's very strange to experience it because like it doesn't represent Dark Souls in the like fighting of it, you know, like you don't climb on the backs of these enemies very much. And I think there's something to be said for like the scale of the fight, that these things are usually much larger than you are.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that felt the most like Shadow of the Colossus was the fact that you have no idea why you're here in the first place, that like
nebulous intentions.
Yeah, you're just sort of present. You start the game and you're like in this place already, and like your natural gamer instincts are to go fight the monsters, right?
Kill things. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that combined with whenever you beat a boss battle, it has this like kind of harrowing scene where it seems like the soul of the boss comes out of it and your character like levitates off the ground and like seemingly absorbs it in a way that is very similar to Shadow of the Colossus, where like after you beat one of those enemies, the like little shadow tendrils come out of it.
Yep.
And it is seemingly painful for the character in Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily get the pain of it in this one, but it's a very similar like just visual motif that they bring up here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the sparseness of the world, you know, it's just these enemies. You don't fight anything else in between. It's
very empty.
Yeah, it's very empty, and there's long areas in between the central portion of this world and where you get to the boss. You like have to climb a mountain, you have to traverse like a lake, you have to go through all these different terrains to eventually get to a little cave in the corner that you walk into, and there's a big old nasty boy in there that you have to kill. Otherwise, it will just destroy you in one hit. Also, it's a one-hit kill in this game, so you're really the tensions are high as a result. We were sort of speaking on this earlier with the like design by subtraction idea from the other games that kind of it comes from Eco. Speaking of Team Eco games, where they tried to make that game with as little as possible. Right, they took everything that felt like cruft or extra and said, let's just remove that. And this game feels so in line with that, of especially the one hit kill thing, which I think initially can feel very punishing. And like it is, right? Like you do have to be good at fighting these bad guys. But I love that it's just like high stakes in these fights. And once you kind of figure out what you need to do and like how to do it, the boss battles are not long. No.
They're like a minute or two at most.
Yep. Just got to learn the dance.
Yeah. And so like it's kind of this fun exercise where like even Dark Souls games, like there's a certain amount of like variability in the fights where it's like, did I do well enough and maybe get lucky enough that the Orphan of Kos didn't do a specific attack enough that I just don't know how to get around yet. It's like in this one, you have to learn every attack because you there's no margin for error.
No, yeah.
But like, I think it's a fair bit more forgiving than like just the brutal assault that sometimes the Dark Souls games can be. Don't get me wrong. I died a lot in this game, but
Same.
like it's very quick. You go back in, you just try and figure out what did I not do there that I should have been doing, or like, was I too greedy with trying to get the arrow back?
Yeah.
Because you have to stand still when you recall your arrow.
Yep.
Which like puts you in such a dangerous position.
Do I need to run and grab my arrow as opposed to call it back to myself? Am I going to trigger something bad if it hits something when I call it back to myself, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways that they play around with this formula, this very simple formula in an interesting way with a lot of these boss battles.
Yeah, it's really cool because it offers the game developers like so many opportunities to be like, how can we just make this boss a little bit different than the other ones, right? Where it's like, this one acts very different than the last 5, or like here's a little twist on some idea that we've already established, right?
Yeah.
All of that's really, really good. Loved the Yeti with the big butt cheeks. You guys shoot him in the butt.
Oh, the Yeti was good. The Yeti definitely stood out.
Yeti was very fun. Do you have any like bosses that you were like particularly fond of?
It sounds kind of strange, but the little brain blob in the very beginning, I enjoyed just seeing, I think it was a heart actually, in a big old blob.
There's the brain freeze, which is the ice cube. Sludge heart.
Probably
the
sludge heart.
The one in the like the slime.
Yeah. That was just like,
that one was good.
That was my first experience with the game teaching me how to play it. And I just thought it was a very nice way of, or a very clever way of showing the pros and cons of so many different things you can do, and just how you have to position yourself so well to get around attacks. And then probably my favorite of the other bosses was the Yeti. I enjoyed the Yeti. He was
very
cool.
good. Yeah. They all have such interesting designs. Like even the what do they call it? Avarice, the manifestation of greed is the treasure chest that you have to fight. That's very cool. And then the very last boss too was like amazing. It reminded me so much of a scene in Death's Door. There's like a boss where you fight them in just this like completely white background.
Oh yeah.
And that's how this one happens too. And I was just like, it's so cool to see them revisit that, or I guess like visit that here and then revisit it in Death's Door. But it just works so well to like set these kind of like high stakes in this game of like, we are beyond like space and time in this fight.
Exactly. We're in the hyperbolic time chamber right now doing this battle.
Very Rom the Vacuous Spider of them to set a fight there.
You love that.
God, dude, that's one of my favorite boss battles like just ever. It's so good. So yeah, it's great. I was like very determined to beat this game. Once I got about halfway through, I'm like, I could do this. I could figure it out. It was really hard. This game was very challenging, but I think it's also worth. I think like it's pretty tough to do it, but it's also worth it. I think like just getting to the end of this game is pretty fun. And if you get to the Yeti, you're like well on your way to beating it.
Yeah.
In fact, you only have like 3 or 4 more bosses.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to get back in. Because there's 8?
8 bosses. No, there's
or there's 8 gates. Sorry. 8 gates.
Yeah, 8 gates, 20 titans. Yeah. Yeah, I thought this game was really good. I had a really good time with this.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I saw in the reviews that people were kind of mixed on this game when it came out. And I don't necessarily think that like that would change dramatically if it had come out today, but I do wonder if just like the perception of Souls-like has changed enough that people would like this more now than they did
weren't
at the
ready
time.
for it back then.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the right like interpretation. That's kind of what it feels like, but I just feel like the genre of like Soulsborne games has like not calcified, but I think that, like I said, there are tenets of that genre now that like a lot of people will inherit when they're making a game like this. And this one weirdly feels like it is not, while it is definitely influenced by the Soul genre, like it isn't pulling from every inch of it. And that kind of feels novel now. Yeah. Again, not to bring up this fucking discourse again, but like Lies of P inherited a lot from the Soulsborne genre. And so it's kind of bizarre to I had to. And but this game feels like it's like, yes, the focus on bosses and the difficulty of it is present, right? That is definitely here. But like the arrow thing is very specific to this game. The fact that you only have the one, and like, the recalls like kind of God of War-y in a way. The sort of like desolate and lonely world. I guess that is in Souls games too, but it feels much more like Shadow of the Colossus than it does the Souls games.
Yeah, because I feel like in Souls games, it feels either post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic in process, right? Apocalypse in process. Whereas this one just feels stark. It doesn't seem like there's a disaster that's happened. It just seems like desolate area.
Yeah, you've come to like some like foreign land or something like that, right? Where it's like the gods used to live here or something.
Exactly. Or it's like a sacred holy land because there's all these like intense iconography around, like very well-maintained grounds, right? For some of the levels, you have to like do a little mini game or not mini game, but puzzle, like light all these torches around here. It's like feels ceremonious in a way.
Yeah, totally. I saw some people saying too that like the story wasn't really present. And like, I don't totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it's present. It's just very sparse. Like it is not, you know, giving you exposition or anything like that. It's told much more through like the world of like, why is any of this here? Or like, what am I doing by fighting the last boss in the game? Like, what does that actually represent? And then the things that happen after that, I think it's much more telling like a myth than it is telling a story.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I really like that.
That's very Shadow of the Colossus.
Exactly. Very Shadow of the Colossus in that like you don't get necessarily big plot beats that tell you exactly what happened. It's much more like speaking in kind of broad generalizations of like a person came to a land and fought all these titans and like, you know, spoke no words and, you know, didn't stop on their quest until it was done and, you know, XYZ happens. And so I think I can't remember the context that we had brought this up in, but like, I think that we've talked before about how, I don't know, video games are very reluctant to engage with stories that are interpretable or like vague, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I sort of understand the reaction there because you're doing such concrete stuff by playing a video game, you know?
Sure.
It's very
physical.
concrete that I'm firing an arrow and shooting someone. And so it's like almost frustrating to be like, but what am I doing? You know, like what is the story to back that up? But I think that there's actually a lot of power in not giving you that and not giving you something specific. It just kind of lets you sit with like the imagery and the actions that you've taken and like, you know, actions you've taken definitely being like, there was no other option. Like that's how you progress in the game was beating these things. But just like, the physical feeling of like, what did it feel like to move through this game? We were talking about this with No Sun to Worship was the game that this came up in of like, like how does a vague or interpretable ending like come up or like, how does that affect someone who's playing? And I think walking away from this game it felt much more like a metaphor or like kind of a myth where you're supposed to take something away from it. Rather than, you know, like, I know what happened to the lore of this place or why the Titans became this way or anything like that.
Yeah. Maybe you're not supposed to know. There's
I think that's part of it,
knowing.
right? Like, there is an interesting angle on like interpretability and restricting a solid answer for the player. So I kind of enjoy that, especially now. Like those kind of experiences are the ones that I'm like really reaching for now in games where it's like, just show me something weird, man. I want to be surprised and like not know where something is going.
Show me some Yeti butt cheeks.
Show me the Yeti butt cheeks, man. Make me the community manager for a community center. And I got 3 eyes and I'm a bird, you know?
Gotta see it. What's good?
I gotta see it. Let me open up that peephole with this crank.
That's quite a sentence.
Yeah. Today I Googled like, is there a better word for the hole in a door than a peephole?
Spy hole.
There is spy hole is there, but like you just can't get away from putting hole in the word.
Yeah.
And none of them sound fun.
No. Spy hole also sounds bad.
It sounds a little voyeuristic in a way that sounds creepy.
Spying on you.
But even peephole is not great.
Yeah. That's I think worse.
Yeah.
Just peeping.
Plus with the combination of crank is like a whole thing.
Crank is also an evocative word.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. Anyway, Titan Souls. I like this game a lot.
This game's a lot of
very
fun.
good.
You know,
Yeah.
it's part Dark Souls, it's part Zelda, it's part Shadow of the Colossus, but just kind of stripped back.
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
Yeah, and like what makes each of those experiences like very fun.
Mhm.
And I think it's like mostly from a combat perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
But still, it's very good. I will say it also goes on sale on Steam very frequently. So like if you find yourself in the middle of a Steam sale, just see if this one's on sale, because I think I got it for like $2 when it was on sale.
Yeah.
It was incredibly inexpensive.
I believe I bought it currently on sale from Good Old Games for $1.49.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
so cheap.
So
It's like again, we try not to make like financial judgments as far as the value of a game goes, because like that's not what we're here to do. But also like $1.50 is pretty good.
can't
That's a
beat that
pretty good
price. What else can you buy for $1.50 nowadays?
Yeah, nothing. A game on the Playdate, actually. You might be able to cop for that.
There you go. But you have to have a Playdate to do that.
That is true. That is true.
Most of y'all got a computer. I know that.
And like most of them can probably run Titan Souls. It's not a super demanding game.
No, it's not.
Thank you, Donnie W, for suggesting this game. It was very fun.
That was great. If you would like to interact with us more on the internet, you can go to our website, videogamepodtimism.com. No,
actually, just
podtimism.com.
Podtimism, in fact.
Even easier. Just podtimism.com. Chase has lovingly created this website and put all of his beautiful podcast art on there, his thumbnails. So you can go and look at all those. You can go and search old episodes. You can search games that we have talked about in old episodes to see if we have mentioned anything that you're interested in the past. And of course, you can suggest games for us to play in the future as well. We will get there eventually.
Yeah.
Not now, not tomorrow, probably not the next day, but we'll get there. We got a big backlog, but we will do our best to eventually get to you. Also, on our website, you can find links to our social media accounts. The most important one is the one to our Discord at The Worst Garbage Podcast Network. We have a little space in there where you can come and chat and talk about the show. It's great. It's good. Come by.
It's very fun. Come check it out. Love talking to people who listen to the show, and like I also like really have an appreciation for folks who are like, hey, I played this game this week too. It's kind of a joy to hear like where everybody else is at with it when they check these games out.
Absolutely. Also, thank you, Scout Wilkinson, for our beautiful podcast art. It's great. It's fantastic. If you would like to commission her, you can go to ko-fi.com/humblegoat. If her commissions are open, it is definitely worth your time and money to get one.
Yeah. She's got great work. Killer.
Yeah.
Killer stuff.
If you want to help spread the good word of Podtimism, you can recommend it to a friend. That's probably the best way of spreading the word. And you can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. We really appreciate those, and we love reading them.
Yeah, it's very good. Thanks for anybody who's been doing that too. I feel like I see that on Spotify fairly regularly of some new numbers getting popped up in there of like, hey, cool pod.
Great.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of thank you, dear listener, for being here. We really appreciate it. We would do this even if no one was listening. So it's kind of cool that people do. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for spending time with us. Coming up in 200, feeling grateful and appreciative of everybody who's been along for the ride, or for the people who just joined up. You too. You get to be appreciated too. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Everyone's appreciated.
It's true.
Chase, do you have any gaming wisdom for us this week?
Yeah, it's a warning.
Oh. Uh-oh.
Dire gaming wisdom. It's all of the gamers. You don't need to listen to this one.
Okay.
If you're making a video game, don't tie my ability to read my email to my ability to play your video game.
Yeah. That was a bummer. That was a bummer.
I couldn't believe that. That's so wild.
I had no idea that they had poor Dabo Benquino hog-tied to a chair
hostage,
with a knife to his throat, saying, "Hey, check your email, motherfucker.
Validate your email, brother.
I gotta be able to sell this email address to anyone who will pay me for it. All right." I need your data, sir. And if you don't give me your data, your data is dead, sir. Send him off to the great death pile in the sky.
Yeah, the ghoul jail in the sky.
The ghoul jail, spelled Gaol.
Yeah, Goll. That was so shocking to me finding out that that's a way to pronounce jail.
I know. I thought it was Gowl.
Yeah, of course, because that's what it looks like.
An ultra bad jail, a Gowl.
Turbo jail. Yeah.
Ruled by Gowlers.
Yeah, I don't want to check my email to play basketball.
That is not the reason I play basketball games at all, is to check my email.
There's so few reasons I check my email at all, and just like video games are not a part of that equation.
Absolutely.
Plus, like, could you just like maybe lock me out of the game if you want it that bad? Why'd you have to kill Ben Quino about it?
We gotta take something you love so you know that we're serious.
Just tell me I can't play until I hit validate. Not like, well, I don't know, we threw him in the harbor. I don't know what happened to poor old Dabo.
My poor child is now 6 feet under.
My ghoulish boy.
Never to be seen again. My ghoulish boy. I've abandoned my child.
I've abandoned my ghoul.
My ghoul. Yeah, that was such a bummer.
Yeah.
I haven't rage deleted a game so quickly, I think, ever. It's
and like
I'm out.
validated rage, you know, not like this game sucks or like I didn't win in the way I wanted to.
Exactly.
Like, they pushed you away. You were just showing up with the energy that they had brought to the table.
Yep. It's just like, all right, this is now a moral imperative is to delete this game and to boycott you. Here we go.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Mars After Midnight. You better not delete my save because I didn't email you back.
Everybody hold your ghouls close because you never know when your last day with them is going to be.
Yeah, true, man. I love my ghouls.
Gotta love my ghoulies.
We'll see you next week, gamers.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye.
Bye.
TWG, the worst garbage, online.